Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's episode number 82 of the Audible Farm podcast. This episode is brought to you by delicious Couchtown coffee. Hey, I'm back on that Couchtown coffee train. I took a little break, and what a mistake. What a mistake that was. It's easily some of the best coffee that exists out there at all. It's roasted right here in Iowa. You can get it at www.couchtowncoffee.com, and you can even save yourself 20%. Enter the code word INDIE. The code word this week is INDIE. When you make an order, just mention that the Audible Farm podcast sent you, and enter the little code word INDIE when you make your order, and that'll let them know you listen to this episode. So thanks everybody for listening, and huge shout out to Couchtown Coffee. Man, feels good to be drinking Couchtown again. Woo! All right. So this week I'm sitting down with indie wrestling promoter Troy Peterson. He's been promoting wrestling in Iowa for almost 20 years now, which is wild to think. There's been a couple of promoters in Iowa that have been going strong for quite a few years, and this is a great episode. I've sat down and I've spent many years going to shows between Troy's promotion at IPW, and I recently talked to Todd Countryman, so check that episode out as well. But I spent so much time going to promotion from these two promotions. Like, I spent a lot of time at them. Troy ran a promotion that was out of Algona, Iowa, which is just a few miles. It's only a 20-30 minute car ride for me from my hometown. So I would go up there all the time and watch shows up there. And, it's wild to have pro wrestling that close to my hometown running, almost weekly events at some points in times. They would do matinee shows, which, the fun part about that, me being a wrestling fan, some of these guys would go through training to, figure out exactly how they wanted to go about wrestling, and then they would try some of their skills out at these matinee shows that would be running on like Saturday afternoons and things like that. And it would give them an opportunity to wrestle in front of a small crowd and actually get to see, what it felt like, as opposed to jumping in, feet first into a huge show, down in Des Moines for their very first show, which I'm sure would be very nerve-wracking. So, it's pretty cool. Troy's built up this nice little place where the people can go watch wrestling, be trained as a wrestler, and not only that, but it's all encompassing. It's everything from the training sessions all the way to places to wrestle your first shows, and all the way through wrestling bigger shows like in Des Moines. And it's pretty cool. We talk about the wrestling community. We talk some crazy stories that he's seen over the last 20 years. We talk all sorts of things. He even, in the end of this podcast, pretty long one, but in the end of the podcast, we even start talking about, some of the opinions we have about different things in wrestling. And it's, wrestling's always been a very opinionated thing. And it's kind of fun to realize that, as we've all grown up and gotten older over the years, we've all, realized that there's a certain air of maturity and business and all sorts of things that need to be taken care of while you're, involved in wrestling, whether you're a fan or a promoter or a wrestler yourself. And we give all the proper due respect to all the people. We talk about a lot of wrestlers in this upcoming podcast, and I wish we could have mentioned more. There's always some you didn't mention, and even after we got done, I was like, oh, we never mentioned this guy's name, or that guy's name, but it's just is what it is. You can only name so many people, and I've seen so many people wrestle, and I'm sure their names have come up in other podcasts that I've done with pro wrestling personalities. But hats off to Troy for doing almost 20 years of wrestling. I'm psyched to see that anniversary show that he's probably going to end up putting on. That's going to be pretty big. So check it out. There's more info on that, more info on the Hall of Fame show, and all sorts of stuff Troy does for the pro wrestling community in and around the Iowa area. So check it out. This episode's going to be great. If you don't know anything about pro wrestling, this is a fun one to let you know exactly what kind of goes on in the pro wrestling scene. So check it out, everybody. I hope you enjoy it. I had such a good time sitting down talking with Troy, and this is episode number 82 with Troy Peterson from Impact Pro Wrestling.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, okay, sitting down today with Troy Peterson. Troy, I've been going to shows of yours now for like we're getting close to 10 years. It's been I've been seeing
Judge.
IPW shows, which is pretty wild. Like
That's awesome.
time's been flying by, and I bet that just means that you've been running shows for at least 10 years. And if I did a tiny bit of research, have you been running shows for almost 20 years?
20 years. I think May 13th of 2021, we're doing our 20th anniversary show in Des Moines. So I'm getting old.
Wow. Wow. What made you want to get into wrestling? Like, especially like promoting wrestling. It seems, I mean, obviously when you grow up watching wrestling and with Hulk Hogan or whoever it is, it's like, I want to do that. But what made you start wanting to promote wrestling?
Gosh, ever since I was a kid, and I have a lot of kids doodled and stuff in high school. I mean, I never did. I would put together these tournaments. I'd put together these, tournaments of the 16-man double elimination of people never to win a world title or, et cetera, et cetera. I would fill notebooks up just putting these together and booking the matches and just deciding in my head who would win. Bruiser Brody won a lot.
Nice.
Spoiler alert. But, do all kinds of things, Canadian wrestlers, tag teams. So I just always had a fascination with putting together the shows. Even before I was smartened up at all, even when I was in junior high, I still thought, man, it'd be fun to be the matchmaker. Wally Carbo was the matchmaker for AWA wrestling out of Minnesota. And, I always wanted to be Wally Carbo. I never really wanted to be Hulk Hogan or Andre the Giant. And that's kind of carried through, when I started wrestling. One of the things I really wanted to get against, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but one of the things I really wanted to go away from is the promoter, booker, heavyweight champion, tag team champion, smartest, funniest, coolest heel,
Yep.
Because it quickly morphs into that, because you can't really book yourself objectively, you're, it's like, and so early on, that's something I really wanted to stick with. Hey, I just want to put together matches. I want to promote the shows. I want to try to get people there and make it about that. But yeah, backing up a little bit, I was up in Minnesota, and a lot of great wrestling going on up there in the late 90s. Jerry Lynn and
we
had Steel Domain Wrestling was going on. You had all these.
That's still going on too, isn't it?
It's still going on. Yeah, in that form, it was. You had Punk and Cabana and Ace Steel and Danny Dominion. I mean, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was wild back then. Yep.
Yeah, West St. Paul Armory. I mean, it was nuts. And so Ed Hillier was the promoter, and he still is. And Horace the Psychopath and Mitch Paradise and T.S. Aggressor, who I would later get to know a little better. Mm-hmm. And just always, I just loved it. I loved indie wrestling, especially. I loved the interaction with the crowd. Mm-hmm. I just loved every aspect of it. And so I moved to Oskaloosa, Iowa. A buddy of mine had bought a furniture store and was going to cut me in on this, so I came down and ran it. So I moved to Oskaloosa blind. I'd never been to the town. First day I got there was the day I moved there. And so I'm running this furniture store I don't know anything about. And I'm bored out of my mind. And I have a little money, I have a little more money than I had up in my life at that point. And I was like, hey, what does it take to run a wrestling show? And my friend from when I was 6 years old, Mike Ingebrigtsen, he was staying with me at the time. Like, what does it take? Rent a building, get some wrestlers, And so we did that. Not unlike people still do that today. You just put these components together and you think, hey, I'm running a wrestling show. And my first show, I think, was February 9th of 2001. And I worked on it for months and months. And it was foggy in Oskaloosa, but it was icy everywhere else. And so I had to cancel the show.
Oh, no.
So my first show ever. I had
Oh,
to cancel. It was
what was that? Like that had to be something like so devastating. Were you like, oh no, this is an omen. I should never do this. This is like, how did that go down?
I mean, right now it gives me goosebumps and makes my stomach kind of hurt. I mean, no shit. That was 20 years ago. I'm saying that. I don't tell that story all the time. I feel
God,
like,
what a kick in the
man, that's a tough
shorts.
one.
Yeah.
It was brutal. So it was kind of funny because nothing was funny. I lie if I say it's funny at all. But no, one of the things is like, so we've done this. We have all these things in place. You know, we have the ring and all the wrestlers like Travis, TS Aggressor, and Kenny Backwash and Mr. Destiny were coming down. They jackknifed the trailer in Algona. I mean, it was just,
Yeah.
it was just glare ice. So nobody could come down. We had, and so I just was like, we already rented out this bar. We bought a keg. We had this huge after party planned. Had all this food catered in. I mean, it was so ridiculous.
Oh my God. Yeah, you went the full Monty.
I did. I had my friends from like Chicago. I had all my college friends were there, and it was just this crazy thing. So then I was like, Fast Eddie, who would later become Matt Convoy. He was running. I'd seen some shows of his down in Bussy, Iowa. HCWA, super hardcore, ultra violent stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so I was just like, hey, he's a wrestler. He lives close by. So I contacted him and just said, hey, would you just want to come and hang out with us? Like the super markiest thing to do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, if I have to cancel a show, might as well. So we had one wrestler that wasn't previously booked to be on our original show, but he showed up and partied with us.
Nice.
And we hung out. Oh, man. Yeah, that should have been an omen to not do it. But then we did it and, you know, did the show in May.
Did you end
a good crowd? But
did you end up running it in the same town?
We did. Ran the same town, same venue.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
The National Guard Armory in Oskaloosa, Iowa. And, you know, and we lost money. Lost money. But I remember, like, the armories are kind of a pain in the neck to run because they have all these, like, cleaning protocols. And I remember everybody had long laughed, and I was, you know, now broke and had to write checks out to a few wrestlers and paid everybody every penny they asked for. But yeah, a couple of them did get checks. And doing that, I was cleaning up the floor. I had to put down this red like stuff to clean up the floor, all this powder all over it. I just remember like, man, I did it. You know, like,
yeah,
this is it. This is all I've ever wanted to do my whole life, and I did it. And so I don't know that too many people get to experience like their actual dream. You're like, hey, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be I want to be an actress. I want to be, you know, whatever. And the only dream I ever had was to run a wrestling show. So, you know, in that moment, it was pretty great, you know, and you can explain it to somebody that outside of this world and they'd be like, man, that sounds like a freaking miserable evening.
Yeah.
But,
well, yeah. I mean, you spent all this money, and then you ended up losing money, and it got canceled once, so you had to do double the work to reschedule. And I mean, nothing seemed to go your way. But at the end of it all, you're sweeping up a mess, and you're just like, man, this was the greatest night ever.
Yeah, I know. Now I get pissed off if I have to, you know, put away chairs. Like, come on, guys, why not? Chairs. You know, now I become the old grumpy fat dude in the corner barking at people. You know.
Oh my god.
I try not to do that, but. Yeah, I just loved it. You know, and I think I don't think that makes me in any way unique. You know, I mean, I think you don't get into this at our level. I don't think too many people get into it casually. You know, like,
oh yeah,
I've had the fortune, you know, I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time with like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and he did get into it as kind of a backup. It wasn't his love or passion, but he realized, hey, you know, his football career wasn't, you know, he got injured and couldn't do that. He can make money at wrestling, learned to love it, fell in love with it, loved being in front of the crowd, and it was great for him.
Yeah.
But he wasn't passionate at an early age about pro wrestling, and so, but I think at our level, at the non-career level wrestler, not too many people are doing it because the only reason to do it is if you love it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, generally speaking, like a musician, let's look at musician. Like, anybody can go buy like $200 worth of equipment and be like, I play guitar. It's like a really low commitment, low dollars spent entry level thing to really like play an instrument or something like that. But like to wrestle, it's like you got to spend the money to train, and then you got to actually show up to training and do it, and then go to a show. That's if you want to become a pro wrestler. But like if you want to promote a show, you got to have a ring, you got to have a place to do it, you got to make it look somewhat professional. I mean, you got to like know who to call to be on the show. You got to like research all that. I mean, yeah, it's not a casual endeavor anybody can just get into. There's not like YouTube channels explaining how to do it,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very purposeful, thought out thing, right? So I think that's what makes it neat is now when you talk to students, I talk to a lot of potential students and every one of them, I mean, almost, I don't think I could come up with an exception, honestly. And you talk to hundreds of people, over the past 20 years, both Travis and I, and everyone kind of starts out, I love this more than you'll ever know. I'm just so, it's like, well, that's great because you're going to be surrounded for the first time in your life with other people that just love this more than you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
So, I think that's so cool. Like, you see it, we have a class of 6 students right now that are like, it's like they all come from different backgrounds. There's, different ages, genders, but yet it's like, hey, they don't, at work, at school, they're not surrounded by people who love pro wrestling. They're not surrounded by people that, like it.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, they get to come and hang out under this roof and where everybody knows, what Kenny Omega did last Wednesday. And everybody knows, hey,
I'll
the top 5 guys in New Japan,
Yeah, one of the first things I realized when I went to pro wrestling shows was like, dude, I love pro wrestling to the point where I'm in a loving way kind of a weirdo in my town because I like pro wrestling that much, right? But I go to a pro wrestling
you become
show.
known for that.
You go to a pro wrestling show and it's just like, oh, I'm not a weirdo at all. There's people that like wrestling way more than me. And then even like you said, the people in the ring are the ones that like it the most probably because they're in there doing it.
Right. Yeah, they had to. Yeah, because they did everything you did. They bought tickets to indie shows. They drove distances to go watch shows. And then they took it a step further and, decided they wanted to get in there. I talk to TS Aggressor quite often. I mean, every day. On average, probably 8 to 10 times a week. And so for the past 10 to 15 years or so. And he has said on multiple occasions, hey, if somebody, because I've always felt like if somebody likes pro wrestling more than I do, they really couldn't be normal. Because I feel like I'm just at the threshold, of where the normal line ends. And, I feel like everybody kind of feels that on some level. Like, it's like, yeah, if you like it this much, I guess it's okay. But if you like it any more than that,
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's there's that like weird fine line of like you probably shouldn't like it too much, I guess, but like at the same rate, like some people really get into the storylines, and that's probably some of the funnest aspect of it, though. Like either for you as a promoter or the wrestler as a performer and a wrestler themselves, to like walk down the ring and have somebody like screaming in their face about something they did the month prior that they were there in town,
Absolutely, yeah. That's the joy for me. I mean, that's the payoff. So, like, it's putting together episodic shows. I mean, doing one-off shows and doing these things, they're fine. And you still do like little storylines in an evening of entertainment. You kind of start off with the main bad guy, establishing himself, and then at the end of the night they get vanquished. It's kind of a basic arc for every movie in existence and every wrestling show that we would do in a one-off situation. But
the brilliance
like doing
of
the Des Moines shows,
that I hate to stop you there for a second, but that's what sucked me in. Honestly, the first show I went to that wasn't like a show I traveled to was when IPW, that's your company, Impact Pro Wrestling, when they came to Humboldt at the county fair. And I went to the fairground event because I got tickets to go to it. And I was like, yeah, I'll go. I'll take a couple of my friends. And honestly, I was just like, this is just going to be some schmucks out there just farting around. And I'm fairly certain it was AJ Smooth that came out first. He was the bad guy. Did he not have like a bullseye on his trunks at one point?
Yeah, it was AJ Smooth. Yeah.
Yeah, and he came out and ranted and raved about how the town smelled like fish and our sheriff was scared to arrest him and all this other nonsense. And the sheriff came out and blasted him in the main event, and ended up screwing him over.
Jaws Kincaid, right? Or no. Yeah, the sheriff. I'm trying to think of who the sheriff was. Yeah, that's right.
Kruger, yeah.
Kurt Kruger, yeah.
It was Dean Kruger was the sheriff. But yes, it was that show hooked me, man. It hooked me. The craziest part about that show also was I think Harley Race was there, if I'm not mistaken.
He was, yeah.
Which is another wild thing.
Yeah.
I didn't think in a million years I'd get that close to Harley Race, It's just
yeah.
Just stuff like that. It opened my eyes. I mean, like you said, it's a standard storyline that fits most movies. Most episodic TV shows of any sort generally have the same kind of concept. And you guys built a storyline and pulled it off well enough that hooked me into, I mean, you're well aware of this too. Like I got just as deep in it as everyone. And I was, I'm driving to Minnesota and Kansas City and Chicago and Milwaukee and everywhere, for shows.
Yep.
It's I got just as deep into it. I've probably got I've got you and probably Todd from 3X to thank for that. But the first show I saw was probably the coolest thing ever, and it was well put because it wasn't like I jumped halfway into a storyline with some people that I had no clue what was going on. AJ instantly came out and was just like this. I don't like this town. It's just something for somebody to come out. It's well put together.
Yeah, I think I learned. I've always watched, even today, I've always watched wrestling as a fan. And that's all I'm worried about is how the fan is seeing it. So when I would go to shows, I thought it was so self-important of these promotions that ran last month in Rochester, Minnesota, and it's an indie group, and now they're running in Minneapolis, and they're like, just bringing you into this. How do you know? I don't have a program. I don't know who's the good guy. It's only going on in your head then, as a
That's
promoter, so it doesn't make any sense. And so even like us, we don't really, when we do Des Moines and Algona, when we were doing both monthly, we didn't really tie over much. I mean, we went as far as, this might get some eyes rolling, but I mean, we've had people turn heel twice, we've had, because Algona's kind of, didn't get out into the world real quickly,
the two markets were completely, the two markets are different, and the exposure that Des Moines had was higher. So like if something happened in Algona, people might not know about it if they don't travel with the company.
Yeah.
And
and I'm not doing the shows for 10 internet people or 20 internet people. I'm doing the show for the live crowd. So nobody in that live crowd, there was no carryover, Maybe Chad Huddleston. Chad Huddleston might have, I should have talked to him. He's probably seen a couple like, that guy turned heel twice,
Yeah.
He might be the only one.
That's the other cool thing is like you have even as a promoter, you have been very interactive with the fan base. Who are the people that show up to every show. You figure it out really quick. Let's put it this way. Like I think like like the third or fourth IPW show I ever went to. I went up there alone because I lived in northern Iowa, you know, and I didn't have very many friends up here, so I went up there alone most often than not. And I went up there alone once, and I want to say it might have been AJ Smooth or Ryan Slade. One of those two guys was like, "Hey, we're all gonna go over to the bar after if you want to like sneak over there." And I was like, "Cool, I'll go over to the bar." And I go over there, and I don't see anybody sitting there or anything. And you were at a table by yourself, and you're like, "What's up? Come on over." And then we literally just talked wrestling and how I was like at the show and stuff. Didn't even know you were the promoter at the time. And then come to find out that like you're the promoter. I'm like, "Oh no way, that's super cool," you know, like to find out you're like a real guy and not just some dude in the back wearing a suit that's got like a newspaper and a fistful of cash, you know.
Oh shoot! You know, one of my first conversations with you, I remember you telling me that you had Rob Schamberger commission a painting of like your parents' house or something.
Yep.
I don't even know why I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
remember that.
Dude, yeah, I became really good friends with him before he was licensed as an artist by WWE, and he was still taking commissions, like, back in the day, and I commissioned a painting of the house. It's really cool, actually. Like, I'm glad that's another thing. Wrestling has got me in to interact with so many people who are also fans that just somehow find a way to tie their fandom into pro wrestling, you know?
Right. Well, and I kind of, the Rob thing, because that was kind of how I got exposed to Rob a little bit. And then when I remember like coming down to the Hall of Fame, I think it was Rob's first year and you were there, and and just Rob, you know, kind of just, "Hey, we're going to try and do this," you know. And then the next year, you know, Jim Ross is like, "Hey, come down to Kansas City next week. I'll introduce you to some folks." And then the next week, Rob's working for the WWE, basically. You know,
yeah,
in the capacity it is still today. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was like within a year they had figured out who he was and how good he was, and we're like, "Hey, check this out," you know. And that's so wild. You know, that's another thing. Like the community is very good to each other. I mean, even just the fact that like some of the people that are higher ups end up realizing what's going on at the shows on a local level. They have ties and ways to figure out what's going on. You know. It's not like they're not watching, especially at the Hall of Fame show that you throw. Which I don't know. Why not get into that a little bit? You throw a show every year. It's called the Hall of Fame show. It's at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. But that's not where the show is at. But that's who puts it on. It's at the Five Sullivan Brothers Convention Center usually, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and that show is insane. There's so many people that it doesn't matter when you were a pro wrestling fan, you will know some of the famous people there. That's literally how wide the berth of famous people is.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, you know. I mean, I honestly, you know, in this year, like, hey, with all the uncertainty we're in right now, and you know, I hope everything, you know, there's no plans to derail from this. But I mean, we just have a great lineup of, you know, we got Mark Henry, and you have Kevin Nash, and
nice,
you know, you have all these folks that hit all these different age groups. You know, Ken Shamrock, Ken Anderson. You know,
oh cool.
You know, it's just a really great lineup. You know, it's just something I'm really excited to be a part of. Sheik Adnan Casey, you know, I mean, all these guys and they're in Waterloo, and that's something every year. You know, I'm so thankful for guys like you and people that do like the shotgun wrestling, just people that are there just trying to get the word out with no idea of hey, what's in it for me. I mean, man, I can't. I mean, really, not just to blow smoke. It means a lot that you're out there doing what you can to get the word out. Not just about pro wrestling with this podcast, but all sorts of local artists and weirdos like Kyle Peterson, who's a great friend of mine. I talked to him today.
Iowa Pizza King, dude. Love it.
Yeah, Iowa Pizza King.
Oh God.
He's in the bread business, so he's a little busy right now these days.
Yeah, so, I bet. God, I bet. Jesus.
He's got his hands full, so I didn't talk to him very long. But yeah, it just, you know, there's just so much. Now I got derailed on my thought. interrupted myself.
It's all gravy. No, it's like, it's crazy because you get to like run into all these people, and then not only that, but like the fans themselves. Like we were talking about how some of them take on a personality of their own, and even like you get to run into. I mean, like I know that you and Kyle have had like a decent amount of tie, because even in the podcast with Kyle, he would talk about how he would help you like picking up wrestlers from the airport and bringing them to the show and things like that,
Yeah.
I mean, even that's
Absolutely.
like some of the coolest thing ever, like I recall a couple of times that when you were hanging out with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and I didn't even know he was in town, and you were like, "Hey, do you know Hacksaw's down in Des Moines?" It's like, "No," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm driving down to Des Moines then just to go say hi to Hacksaw," and bless Hacksaw's soul, he's either faking it or he remembers, but it's like he remembered me from time to time, and it's like crazy to think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you know what, that guy, I think he does remember. I do. Him and Baron Von Raschke are two guys that are like, hey, I'm always assuming that people don't know who I am. I don't care if I've talked to you 30 times, because I'm so terrible at names. I'm so terrible at remembering people like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too,
I can
man.
remember faces, but yeah, I'm not great at names. So I'm always assuming nobody remembers my name. But those two guys, Baron and Duggan, are pretty great. Remember my wife's name. Baron remembers my parents' name. It's just crazy, but
yeah.
So,
The funny part about that is I remember it would have been Midnight Guthrie. Captain Midnight went to pick him up once from the airport, and it was like, I think it was the first time those two ever like interacted on like a personal level, face to face.
Sure.
But he was just like, "Oh, this little guy came and picked me up. He's the nicest guy," and you never hear him just like talking about other people, like just being nice. And you're like, I couldn't believe how down to earth Hacksaw was when I actually met him. That was crazy. But I mean, like, even as far as just like going to the Hall of Fame shows, I remember one time talking to would have been Larry Hennig at one of the shows.
Sure.
And I didn't even know that it was him either. And I was just talking to him a whole pile about like, "Oh, this is a great day for a wrestling show. And did you travel here?" And he's like, "Yeah, I traveled here." It's like, "Oh yeah, I mean, like, what were the roads like?" Just hem-hawing with someone else that was at the show about, I can't wait to see this match. It's going to be great. I can't believe these guys are here. And he's just like, "Yeah, it's going to be awesome." And someone's like, "What are you talking to Larry Hennig about?" And I'm like, I didn't know that was Larry Hennig. I just had like a 10-minute conversation with him.
That is awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's that Hall of Fame weekend. I mean, it's July 23rd to the 25th. And just to go in quick advertising mode, I mean,
do it.
It's really hard to explain for people that haven't been there. It's not like a Comic-Con, and you can speak to this too, obviously, but it's not like, hey, Stan Hansen's going to be here from 1 to 3, and you line up and you get his autograph. Now, that is going to happen one time on Saturday from 1 to 3.
Yeah.
People will be sitting there and you can get their autograph. But all weekend long, I mean, like the list of people this year, you got Jerry Briscoe, you got Trish Stratus, J.J. Dillon, Thunderbolt Patterson, Bob Root, Mark Henry, Ken Shamrock, Kevin Nash, Tommy Rich, Colt Cabana, Ken Anderson, Tony Gurria, freaking Wes Briscoe, Tony Atlas. I mean, it's a great lineup.
That's a stacked lineup.
It's just humbling to be a part of it. But also those 20 guys, are going to be in a 2-block radius for 3 days.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you can't really, like I've eaten breakfast and Jim Ross is sitting there by himself, and and he points to a chair, which is that means come eat breakfast with me.
Yes.
So that's pretty awesome. I get to, and my fandom is pretty freaking high all the time, but in those situations, I mean, yeah, I love it. It's never lost on me. It's never lost on me that I can call Jerry Briscoe and ask him a question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's great. The fan in me is forever thankful for being in the position I'm in, and in regards to the Hall of Fame. And I really like people to take that in. It's in your backyard too, if you're in Iowa,
Yeah,
that's something to me that's so important about it,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
I remember seeing like a giant flyer for it, and it was like the year before I went to my first one, I think, and it was I believe like maybe Terry Funk was at it, and
Okay, that would have been 2000. We'll call up James Jeffries. He'll know the date you saw the poster. He'll know the year, and then he'll know the birth date of everybody on the poster. James Jeffries is a wrestling date savant. Just to throw that out there.
Have to pick his
I think
brain.
it would have been 2000. You do that. I think it would have been 2010. So
yeah, because I want to say that would have been about 11 or 12 would have been the first one I went to. So let's see here.
Okay.
Was the next one would have been Bret Hart and Roddy Piper might have been there. Does that sound familiar? Or what?
God, that would have been the year before.
Before
that would have been
okay.
like 2000.
Okay, so yeah,
So the year
it would have been the year
first
after
year
the
you would have
Funk
been
one.
there was Duggan. Was
yes.
Duggan there?
Yeah. Yep.
And Austin Aries won the Battle Royal, or yeah.
I believe
the Battle
so.
Royal.
I believe so.
Yeah, he was just heading down to TNA. He was moving from Minneapolis, and I said, "Hey, you want to swing by?" And he goes, "Yeah." He just came by, just did the show, and kept driving down to Florida.
That's crazy cool.
He was only there for like 3 hours. He's just like, "Yeah, I'll swing by." I'm like, "Sweet, thank you."
That's freaking wild. And that's honestly, I wonder how much of that actually does it take of you just to like put a line out there and ask some of these guys to come, because I've seen a lot of people travel to come wrestle at shows at IPW. I mean, not just at the Hall of Fame show either.
Yeah, some of that is I could probably do a little more of that, but part of it for me is the absolute worst thing about being a booker / promoter is telling men and women, no, the show's full. I hate it. I hate telling people, hey, we don't have room for you this show. We only have 14 spots. It doesn't mean you're not one of the top 14 people. It just means the way we have it set up, you don't fit in it real well. And I hate having that conversation with people. So oftentimes, or more often than we utilize, we do have offers of guys coming through or whatever, and sometimes I'll be like, gosh, I'd love to tell you yes, but that's just one more person I have to tell no.
Yeah.
And and part of that too is, hey, I don't want to, there's a lot that goes into it. You don't want to have a show length. I think the Des Moines is it's a pretty smart crowd, wrestling smart crowd. And hey, if you go 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes, they're fine with that. But you start going into that 10 o'clock hour and you're expecting people, just casual wrestling fans. I know I'm going to be there still because I love this. You're going to be there and you love it.
Oh yeah.
But our bread is buttered and the wrestlers' envelopes are filled with the money coming from casual fans that are just like, they got a full bar, pretty good cookies at 4K.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go down there, watch some wrestling. You know, we don't. It's not a church. You don't have to. You don't do this at church either. But you don't have to profess your love for all things pro wrestling to come in and enjoy a show.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to punish that person by having a 16-match show, and so therefore you're kind of required to limit it to X amount of matches, and therefore you have X amount of spots. And so that's always, I'd like to take advantage of that stuff more, but sometimes I don't, just because I don't want to like tell somebody else, hey, because that sucks.
Dude, all this makes sense because it kind of ties back into what you were talking about earlier, where like if the casual fan is usually the one kind of filling the seats, like imagine a summertime run, you guys go to do county fairs and things like that. You want to make a show that is generally enjoyable to somebody on a single occasion, because this might be their first and maybe only time they get to see a pro wrestling show in their life. So you want to make it enjoyable start to finish. And you want to do it all while they're still there, because, like you said, if you're at like a wherever and it's their first time they've ever had an opportunity in their town to see pro wrestling, you don't want to be like, all right, so I got to do some backstory. So like 3 weeks ago, this guy, his girlfriend said this, and then this other guy's girlfriend didn't like it. So there's going to be a women's match, you know, and you know, you don't have time to do nonsense like that. Like this guy, he's mean to all the fans. So when he comes out, boo him, you know, like you don't have time to do that nonsense. So you want to like make it all as concise and compact, but as efficient as possible. And like you said, if you start stacking 14, 15 matches on there, it kind of starts soaking up time and, you know.
Yeah, and people have an attention span. You know, I have an 11-year-old. I don't care what the hell it is. It could be his favorite thing in the world. At about 2.5 hours, he's done with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like cookies,
you know?
but if you gave me all the cookies I ever wanted to eat, I'd probably eat about 20 of them and be like, I'm never eating cookies again. You know, like it totally makes sense.
Yeah, and you know, yeah, there's a lot of stuff like, well, and we do like these what's happening. I remember, and it's just kind of a little, and we do those for Des Moines. We also do them for fair shows too. The fair shows are like, you know, heavyweight champion, the big picture. He is a bad guy.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Tonight he's taking on James. So, because some of the part of that is too for the wrestlers, because I want people to remember these wrestlers, and if you see their name in a lineup sheet, you can look at, okay, that's big picture. I can yell at him. I can interact with him.
Yeah.
Hey, if I look down at my phone while the ring announcer over a PA system at a grandstand at a county fair and I don't catch the guy's name, now I can't yell at him. Now I can't, you know, now I'm taken out of the action a little bit. I don't know what his name is. I just missed for 5 seconds. So,
dude, that,
you know, so
that makes a ton of sense too, because as simple as it sounds, those little printed flyers that you give out to everyone that walks into your shows, those help out so much. Because I mean, even as I have become more of a casual fan and not a like super dedicated fan recently, I get to at least learn the names of some of the new guys I haven't seen, because I've seen your big pictures, your Justin Decents, your AJ Smooth,
sure,
your James Jeffries. I mean, I've seen all of the people that have been there the whole time, you know, and Ugly, and I mean, you even said T.S. Aggressor. I've seen him wrestle before, and there's tons of other names that I've wrestled for you and still wrestle for you that I remember. But there's still some new guys. There's new guys out there. I want to know their names too and know who they are and why they're, you know, why they don't like or they do like somebody. And even on Facebook, I've seen that you've done a pretty good job of like, when there's an event, you're like, hey, this event, this is like basically what's going on. So if somebody stumbles upon your Facebook thing, they can be like, oh, I know who this guy is. I read it in the description that, you know, AJ Smooth is trying to avenge his loss from last week to so-and-so or whatever, you know. And
yeah, and even though you don't expect, so that's kind of like a bridge there between, gosh, I feel like we should charge admission for other people that want to, you know, we're giving away all my knowledge. You know, I don't have much knowledge. I can tell you everything I know in about a half hour. So I'm probably well on my way to telling you everything I know about wrestling. But yeah, those sheets, they provide like a little bit of a bridge between, because we said this earlier, but that's the joy for me, is doing the episodic story stuff. You know, trying to get people to buy in on, hey, we want to see Malice kill Dalton Cooper.
Yeah.
You know, we want to see that happen, you know, and to get actually into it, to actually kind of, you know, to create a real feeling like that. And it's difficult to do. And we don't do it very often. You know, we try every time, but it is hard to do. But that's what makes it fun. And sometimes you put too much effort into that, you do alienate that casual fan. If you're just doing all these intricate story arcs that people aren't, you know, hanging on your every word so they miss something, you know.
Yeah. And kudos to the wrestlers.
Kind of help.
Oh yeah.
Tell a little bit more of the story if you want to kind of pay attention. And again, we're not going to tell. We don't have commentators. We don't have freaking TV. We don't have 5 different, you know, TV camera angles and backstage promos to tell these stories. So
exactly,
the stories you're able to tell are pretty limited. But
yeah, but like
if you do it right.
Yeah, like you said earlier, though, like if you have somebody come out and get on a microphone, let the crowd know why they shouldn't like you, you know. And one of the last shows I went to, The Big Picture, who's always been good at getting the crowd to not like him, was able to establish instantaneously why you shouldn't like him. And it's like, all right, I'm going with this guy. I hope he loses, you know. And you figure it out like right away, like, this guy, I don't want him to win. So kudos to even like the wrestlers for having the ability with like a very limited time span with a microphone to get you to not like him, or even like walking out into a crowd and just within like the first couple minutes of a match you can figure out, or even before the match starts you can figure out who you're not supposed to cheer for. You know, it's like
I lost the audio there.
Oh yeah, I was talking about how even sometimes before the match starts you can figure out who the good and bad guy is.
Yeah. I think, that is something, like with The Big Picture. We just were joking about this the other day, like, because a lot of times wrestlers that are heels, they kind of gravitate towards trying to be like a cool heel, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And TS said the other day, him and James and I were talking, and he goes, "Yeah, you know what a cool heel is? It's a baby face." That's it. You know, I mean,
I like that.
So Big Picture's not a cool heel. He's a heel you don't like.
Yeah.
You know, he's a guy you don't like. So
that makes sense too.
The other trick.
Because, like, I mean, like, I remember, like, you can yell something at him and he won't just be like, you know, brush it off his shoulder and stuff. He kind of freaks out about it. He's like, you know, like he's almost, like, you can be like, you know, dude, you smell bad. And he'd just be like, what'd you say to me? You know, and he's like, freaks out about everything. It's not like he's just like, dude, shut up. You know, like, it makes sense. It makes total sense. Especially like the cool heel being a baby face. Like, that's how like Stone Cold Steve Austin got his thing, right? You know, he was just like a heel that was eventually so cool. Everyone was like, this guy's awesome.
Yeah, we need real heels. You know, we need heels that the crowds are going to boo, you know, and so that's kind of the trick. And that's kind of the trick to find people that want to be that, because a lot of times wrestlers they want to be a heel, but they still kind of want people to like them, you know, like Big Picture doesn't want people to like the Big Picture.
Yeah, that's pretty
character
apparent.
of the Big Picture doesn't like anybody there, you know, and that's kind of, you know, that was one of the more fun things I did creatively, wrestling wise, with the heel face stuff, was having Ugly a face everywhere but Des Moines, and then keeping that as kind of a storyline where it's just like, hey, you guys don't get it. People like me everywhere. It's you idiots here in Des Moines.
Oh,
I'm the most popular wrestler in this promotion.
That's awesome.
You know? And he goes, yeah, it was a lot of fun, you know. And he goes, you know, and he would like hand out these sheets and, you know, like to people and calling them morons. He's like, Des Moines doesn't get it, you know.
That's brilliant.
I'm popular. And it was fun. It was, you know, it was a lot of Ugly, and you know, we kind of talked that over. And yeah, I mean, he was, he did great, you know, and the crowd, yeah, it was a fun angle, you know. And so you can have him wrestle as a face in other places. Now, he didn't, you know, we kept him insulated from the people he was feuding with and that kind of stuff. But I mean, you could have him, you know, wrestle people he was neutral to in other areas as a face or a heel, depending on where it was at. It was fun. But
yeah, I've seen him as both a face. I've seen him as both a face and a heel. I mean, he's been doing it a long time, so he knows what he's doing. But he was very good at both. You know, like just the whole fact that his name was Ugly, it translated to a heel name pretty well too.
Yeah, I liked him as both. I you know, and for a long time, I liked him as he was with Justin Decent. You know, and they're kind of, you know, they did a lot of comedic stuff.
Yep.
And I like that. I mean, Justin's one of the, you know, best, if not the best comedic wrestler that we've ever had, you know.
Yeah.
And he can certainly, he's not one dimensional, but in that role, he's, you know, he was managed by a freaking blow up doll for a long time. You know, I mean,
that's hilarious.
He used to do this shtick. And he would come to a town. He had Susie the blow-up doll, who had clothes on. You know, we're family friendly, so we have to have all of our blow-up dolls fully clothed.
Yes, Makes sense.
Very important. And so he had Susie, and so then if we went back to the town, like the manager, would be like, you know what, this guy we're wrestling's a moron. Like his manager, his girlfriend's a blow-up doll,
Yeah.
And then Justin would come out and be like, hey, Susie is not my girlfriend. As of this morning, she is my fiance. And like, and we, so it was, so Justin was great. Ugly in that role was really good too. I mean, but then when he got into being, after that, when those two split up, I kind of saw Ugly maybe, if I thought back to that time frame, I kind of thought as Justin being kind of the Shawn Michaels and Ugly as the Marty Jannetty, maybe. Just because Justin was more in your face while they're wrestling. Justin was more vocal and carried a larger presence. But, as it turned out, they were very, very equal, and Ugly very much shined on his own.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to the tag team guy,
Yeah.
He was great.
You were touching a little bit on having like some comedic wrestling. That's probably one of the things I like about going to your shows quite a bit is it's not one style only. You get one match that's kind of you get a little bit of like, I don't know, called grab assery or whatever, but people are kind of dinking around and having fun. Maybe the ref gets involved in a funny spot where he gets rolled over in a match or something, and just something goofy kind of usually happens in one of the matches. Another one is like a very serious match that you like actually are so emotionally involved in that you just want to like yell at some of the people that, and actually get you to be like, I hate you, big picture, and you just like want to scream in his face, stuff like that. You have a very good mix of matches. I mean, even just to the point where like it sounds as dumb as it sounds. Thrill Cat was always one of my favorite things. Every now and then I'd see Thrill Cat come out and I'm like, oh dude, this is going to be funny because Thrill Cat always does something insane,
Right. I think that is the variety side of it is it's key. Again, you're kind of, there's not enough people that like just one style of wrestling in a town, Des Moines or Algona, to just give that style. We don't have the population density. Like even like at Chikara, it just did comedic wrestling in, I don't know, they in Philadelphia or wherever the heck they were.
Yep.
They did not draw very well as a live attendance show.
No, as a matter of fact,
being that one-dimensional, they're great.
Yeah. I've got some of the old early Chikara DVDs still, and like their shows are like just people sitting around and standing in like a place that's barely bigger than the ring. It's like you said, it's even in Philadelphia. When it first started, it wasn't as big of a draw. It just wasn't.
Yeah, it was hard because because you're just presenting that one style, and so it's somewhat born out of necessity. I mean, Bruiser Brody is probably my all-time favorite. Stan Hansen, guys, I liked hard-hitting. I was a mark for big guys.
Yep.
Yeah, I liked physicality. I liked, hey, guys made contact and guys, beat the crap out of each other. And that was always something that I liked. And I did that for quite a while to promote shows in that vein. We had freaking 6'8" guys on a show for years that were all over 6'2", 6'3". I mean,
oh jeez.
And guys are just humongous guys, and guys that could bench 400 pounds, like Johnny Fitness and T.S. Aggressor and Mr. Destiny, and Mitch Paradise and AWOL and all these like, and then as time goes on, it's just now wrestling is the pace to be a contemporary wrestler. You can't have 12 guys that are 6'2", 300 pounds and put together a show that a contemporary wrestling fan is going to be able to enjoy. So
true.
It's not always. I guess what I'm saying is it's not always what I like. It's what I think our fans will like. And in big pictures, definitely, maybe I'm a little biased because he's the most Brody-like guy we have, and he is our heavyweight champion, and he has been for a while. So maybe on some subconscious level, I'm favoring him for that. But no, but I do. I like Jake Durden. He was.
Oh
yeah,
guy. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, Jake Durden. Yeah, God, that's another one. I remember seeing one of his first matches and just being like, "Oh, dang."
Yeah, and he can go. I think big picture can go too. But Jake Durden, he's got a little more mobility on him yet, even. And I think for his size, that guy can wrestle. I mean, it's great.
I think. I mean, like a lot of this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, like with like the cookies. Like you can't just have cookies all the time; you won't like it. So if you have all big guys hitting each other hard, then a big guy hitting another big guy doesn't measure up. If that's what you saw the last match and the previous match and the one before that, and I mean, I'm sure there's some of that goes into it too.
Yeah, you're right. You gotta, we do these run sheets, where you're kind of asking people. To kind of play, to be, hey, this is kind of how we want this match to. We want it hard hitting, or we want it fast paced, or we want it,
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to dictate a lot, but we want the emotion to be a certain way at a certain time. We want the crowd, because the crowd has endurance too. And this is something with the Hall of Fame shows. I'm just battling the entire time because it's fun, because there's 500-600 people there and they're going ape shit and they're appreciative and they're freaking incredible fans, and they come from all over the country and they are awesome, but they have endurance, they have stamina at a level just like the wrestlers do. So if those first few matches are sucking the wind out of everybody because they don't want to leave the ring because it's so damn much fun to be in front of that crowd, that makes it harder on the matches to follow them. At some point, that crowd's energy is going to be gone. It doesn't matter how great you are.
That's
it just
true.
matters. Hey, they have X amount of, fuel in their tank too. So you try to kind of give them, Ricochet, Sami Callihan, and then, Malice versus, the Death Dealer in a chain match. Those two matches you can follow each other with because one is at a level 10 of pacing and the other one is at a level 10 of brutality. So it's a different type of energy you're getting,
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of that you got to think about when it comes to like putting on not just a show, but even as like you've been in wrestling long enough, like 20 years promoting shows. I'm sure over time, what people that go to indie shows expect to see has probably changed. Generally speaking, like you were talking for a while, you booked a lot of bigger guys. Like, was there ever like any overall changes in IPW from like its infancy until now as to like? I usually book, guys from all across the state. Now I like to book guys that are local to here. And is there any sort of like things or trends you've seen yourself change over time?
Yeah, certainly. I think at first, like, part of it was, hey, when we were running in smaller towns in the early 2000s, I always thought that the fans' preconceived notion of what was going to come to Delta, Iowa, a town of 400, was Peter Stockdale and Troy Peterson wearing underwear out there wrestling around. That's what they expected to come to their town.
What a sight.
They weren't expecting freaking...
Book it.
I don't even want to...
Next month at the Vault. You heard it here first. No, just kidding.
And they don't want to hear, they don't think Perry Saturn's coming to town. We surprised Delta, Iowa with Perry Saturn. We didn't even announce him. We just had him show up and interfere.
Oh my God, like, that's insane.
And Delta, like I said, population 400 on it. If everybody has a friend come, it's probably closer to 200 than 400. But, so when you're doing those types of shows, all we were trying to do with a poster was put guys on there that looked like they didn't live around Delta. Guys like Johnny Fitness, guys like Mr. Destiny. You're putting these Latin Thunder with the mask. You're putting these guys on the poster that are these big, you know, that make you believable, that make you credible, that give everybody on the show credibility, because the expectation at that time was you had to be huge to be in this. And so as time went on, now that's barely a thought. You know, you still want guys to look the part.
Mm-hmm.
You still want guys to be tan and in shape and bring something to the table looks wise. And so you can put them on a poster. But now it's much more geared towards the athletic ability. You know, it's much more geared towards the pacing and being able to do a lot of quote unquote stuff. You know, and that's more what the expectations of the fans are. They don't want to see a guy fight out of a freaking chin lock for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
they're gone. You know, I mean,
it makes sense.
Freaking out the door. You know,
well, I mean, and that just comes back to talk about styles, though. Like the different styles that people like. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing some of that. Like we're talking like William Regal, like working on like a tiny. You know, he's going to work on your wrist, your left wrist for like the whole match. You know, like that kind of stuff entertains me because I've seen so much wrestling. But like you said, to a casual fan, they might want to see some faster paced stuff, drop kicks and people bouncing off ropes, maybe some like a high spot off the top rope or something. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and when you think about like bringing guys in, or you know where we're booking from, like one of the changes was like, you know, Nathan Edwards and Clay Cooper from a few years ago, and they just, you know, Clay on his, you know, first day of training could do a running shooting star press. You know, nobody's teaching him to do that. He's just running, and he can do it.
That's crazy.
You know? And so, you know, so when you had that kind of, and then you had the Regal, you know, then we brought the Regal twins in, and you kind of suddenly it was like, man, this is freaking. As long as they don't die, this is going to be really fun to watch. You know, and that's, and so now you got guys like, you know, Tyler Golden Boy, and you know, all that's kind of this next generation. These last 3 or 4 years, these guys are a lot more. They do a lot more crazy things that everybody else like. Ugh, you know. Yeah. What are you doing? You know, like you're gonna, you know. But hey, they can do it, and they have the ability to pull that off safely and certainly not without risk, but you know, they can do that at a very high level. And so that's changed the scope of a lot of our shows, you know, and those like guys like the Hooligans.
Oh yeah.
You know, bringing those freaking lunatics in.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're great.
I remember they came to one of your shows and they had wrestled in like Mexico the week prior or something. Like those guys went all over and wrestled everybody for any reason at all. They would fight anybody.
Yeah, and in the back too. Hey, we don't no drinking in the back, no drugs, no. You know, we want to do that afterwards. Just you know,
if you want to do any of that,
because you have to drink.
Yeah, do what you want on your own time, but while you're here, be professional. You know.
Yeah, and even the Hooligans, who are, I mean, I love those guys. I'm sad to see that they're not wrestling now, but. You know, they said, hey, you know, they go like, hey, we just appreciate how professional this is, how well ran it is, ran it out of here. You know, and I mean, it meant a lot to me because they go and work for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, they're not just working for 3 other dudes. And so, and I really take a lot of pride in that because that's something where when I started out, I just booked the best wrestlers from everywhere. And that doesn't always make an all-star team doesn't always make the best team. You know, it's just not. And so eventually it was kind of, hey, I want to win. I want to do good shows, but I want to do it with good people. I want to do it with people that, you know, are going to take it serious and not go out there. I mean, I did so many shows early on where guys are drinking freaking pitchers of the beer and back and I just, oh, God, just get it out of here. And hey, you've been around us. I mean, we party. I'm 46, and I don't party like I used to, and I should have never partied like I used to. But it would get damn ridiculous, especially at the Hall of Fame shows. I mean, it would just be ridiculous, the amount of consumption that would happen. But it just happens after the show. It's real easy.
Yeah.
So, early on, we weeded that out. And now it's the locker room leads the locker room. It's guys like, I don't want to leave anybody out, but it's guys like James and Maddie and AJ and Justin and, Al, Death Dealer and Ryan. And guys that have been around a long time. They go, hey, for guys coming in, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no? And like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Troy's not gonna like that. Trav's not gonna like that. Chad's not gonna like that. And so, and that's good. And so, I don't want to be a fun hater. Hey, we're only there 2.5 hours. You can't go 2.5 hours without, keeping your head in the game. Then,
I mean, a lot of it comes down to like not just professionalism and all that other stuff, but like let me just put it this way: like I've been to enough wrestling promotions, and I've seen some of them that weren't ran as well. Even just as a fan sitting there watching them, you go to the shows where that they didn't put a whole lot of thought into how everyone's going to go about doing everything, or this guy's going to be a bad guy and that guy's not, and I don't know. A lot of pro wrestling shows are run out of bars, so you don't really know like. I'm not putting anybody on the spot, but some of the shows I've been to, because I've been to shows where companies only ran, 20 shows and that was it ever, and I mean, some of those shows, there's reasons why they don't last because they lack a little, like this weird form of professionalism that is involved where everyone is there to fight each other, quote unquote, but everyone is there to do it together,
Yeah, I don't think you realize that's what you want. Like, as a come to a fan, you just want this chaos and you want this crazy atmosphere, but you realize like, hey, you want it to be thought out, just like you go to Stomp or you go to shows like that they're chaotic, or the Cirque du Soleil shows, they're chaotic, just crazy shit going on all the time. Everywhere you look, people are jumping out of the sky and landing in water and going on fire.
Yeah.
But it's all thought out, it's all planned. And so I think that's kind of wrestling fans. And I'm not saying planned in the sense of, hey, we're exposing the business and this is all, not that part of it, but just, hey, starting on time.
Yeah.
You've been planning this show for freaking 6 months and you can't start on time? What the Sam hell?
Yeah.
And don't have like starting?
Don't have the flyer say one thing and then the Facebook page say another, and then when you get a hold of like the promoter or somebody, they say a different time, and then you show up and it still starts at it later than all of those times. Like I've been to shows where that's happened, where it's like it says doors at 6:30, show at 7, so you show up at 6:30 and nobody's there to open the doors and there's nobody in line, and then they're like, show doesn't start till 7:30, and then you're like, all right. And you look on Facebook and it says, well, it says 7, I think, but and it doesn't start. Like I said, I've been to hundreds and hundreds of shows by 20, 30, 40 different companies at least, around the Midwest. Like I said, some of them didn't last long. Some of them were kind of set up for a short run initially, but still, like, it's crazy to go to the shows and just think that, like you said, it's not a casual endeavor that somebody can just go out there and just do a one-off wrestling show. It's almost impossible to do. You still there?
I think I
might have lost me.
I think, you said casual endeavor. Sorry, I might have to edit that. I heard you say casual. It's not just a casual endeavor, and then we got cut off.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was talking about. Like, it's because of like some of these shows, they don't plan out for the future. They don't think too much about it, or the way they're going to go about it is a little bit different than thinking about it in a deeper sense. Like, I never thought about the fact that the crowd has endurance, just like the wrestlers have some sort of endurance, and it makes total sense because I mean, if you go to a concert and you're standing there for 4 hours waiting for your favorite band to come on. It's just like, man, my back's starting to hurt and I'm tired of standing here. And then by the time your band comes out, you're like, just play the last song and get it over with. I'm ready to drive home. Like that translates.
I love going to Iowa State football games, and when we're on defense and it's third down and we're getting up there and we're freaking, we're losing our minds, we're screaming and you're losing your voice and the game's close. I mean, and that happens and it's, comes down to the wire and you win. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm like, I just walk out of there. I feel like I played a game of football,
Yeah.
And that's what we want the crowd to feel. We want the crowd to have these bursts of emotion and to give everything to it. But we have to understand that has, we don't want to suck all that out. And then in the main event, they leave and it's like,
oh yeah,
it's good to get it. It kind of got flat,
Yeah, that makes total sense, though, too, because the main event's the match you wanted everybody to see. It's the one that all of the matches lead up to that anyways. Like, if there was any promotion to it, that it leads up to that for a reason, and that's something that you want to try your best to, avoid having everybody leave before that happens. But, at the same time, you want to start off kind of hot, though, too, somewhat, because you don't want to start off slow and have everybody think it's going to drag the whole time. So it's a weird balance that you always got to throw in there.
It is. When we were doing shows, it was kind of in that transitional period where I wanted to, when we do fair shows, and I wanted to, that crowd, I wanted to have credibility. Mm-hmm. I wanted to, send guys that look like they're on TV. So, send Johnny Fitness and Mr. Destiny out there and cut a promo, and then start with, Mitch Sparrow versus James Jeffries. Give them this high flying, exciting, fast paced match right off the bat. But so you kind of gave them, hey, these guys are going to be on the show. They're kind of WWE look. And then you give them a match where it's like, oh, wow. These guys don't look like Mr. Destiny and Johnny Fitness, but they're a hell of a lot of fun to watch. And then you kind of, that was always something a way I like to structure shows is kind of put that, what you think is going to be your second best match, or maybe even your best match from a work rates perspective first.
Yeah.
Last show in Des Moines, we did Clay Cooper versus Tyler Jones to open.
Nice.
And, I wanted them to be impossible to follow. Yeah, and they were impossible to follow. It's probably very well, could have been, the best match on the show in a lot of people's opinions. So, and that was, it's by design. You wanted to, and Des Moines is a lot more fun because Des Moines, you don't have to, they've seen a lot of wrestling, so you don't have to, you can really mix it up. You don't have to have kind of the same,
Yeah.
You don't have to have the heels. You don't have to have matches go down in the same way, obviously, because they're familiar and, they know what's going on. So that's a lot more fun to book shows for, like I said, the episodic crowds. But
yeah, I bet just going down into that Des Moines scene, I spent a lot of time down there. There's some dedicated fans that go week after week, different promotions. It doesn't matter. They'll go to everything. And it's cool to see that, in the crowd and have those people. And like I said, you get to see them every single week. It's kind of fun to just be like, oh, hey, what's going on? You give them a little hey, and the wrestlers themselves even recognize these people and somehow work them into this where they're like, I've seen this guy here for a few weeks, or the last 4 months. I'm just going to yell in his face because he gets it. It's not going to be like you're terrifying somebody that's coming for the first time.
Right. It is. It's great. We talk a lot about, the community and the family of wrestling and Impact Pro Wrestling. And we think about hey, there's children that are born because of Impact Pro Wrestling. There's marriages that have happened. There's all these things. My wife, I would never have met my wife. She knew Chance Cordova and Brian Ash and Brent Fillmore and Gage Octane from karaoke. And so,
oh wow,
Montoya X, they would do karaoke in different places, and there's a bar called Maddie's Place in Des Moines, and it was Montoya X and Mick Mayhem's 21st birthday party. So Mick Mayhem, Montoya X, and AJ Smooth came up from Fairfield to Des Moines, and Travis and I, TS and I, went down to the party, and I met Caroline, my wife of 15 years. And so, yeah, so that's really cool to think, like, hey, that's probably the most lasting, that's kind of the neat legacy of it is, because of this crazy, silly thing that my parents probably thought I was going to grow out of when I was 12. And now they're in their 70s taking tickets for me. That this has blossomed into this thing. It's a lot of real world implications. James Jeffries and Miss Frankie J are going to get married this year. I mean, there's so many
cool. Congrats.
Things that have come out of that. So I mean,
that's another thing.
It's not long.
I got to give a shout out. I saw Frankie J wrestle a man last time I wrestled, or last time I went to a wrestling show, and that was awesome.
Where was that at? Was that in Des Moines?
That was in Algona. Yeah. She came out and put out an open challenge and wrestled a man.
Wrestled Max Chill.
Yes. Yep. Yes, that is correct.
Max Chill.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that's.
God. I have, and that's the other thing. I just think like I haven't been to as many wrestling shows as I have been in the past, but I love going to live wrestling shows so much. I don't know why. It's so enjoyable to me to see these people out there performing and doing what they're doing, and it's so much better than like if I had never seen it and somebody was like, go to an indie wrestling show, I'd be like, meh, I don't know. But like having gone to one and
Right.
realizing how much I enjoyed it, and I still enjoy every show I go to. It's awesome.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Go for it.
As a person that's been to a lot of shows,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll give you my opinion, but like guardrails or no guardrails for indie wrestling?
Ooh, that's a good question. The guardrails make it look professional, but a lot of times they're hokey. So like if somebody tries to use the guardrails, it doesn't work very well. So I tend to not like guardrails, honestly.
Yeah, like for me, I mean, on the guardrail side of things, I mean, a lot of people were like, especially like at the Hall of Fame show where it's, it's pretty crazy and there's a lot of people there and, obviously things can get out of control, but it's like, to me, the guardrails were always the one thing that kind of separated it from the WWE. I mean, WWE's production is going to be higher, the wrestlers are going to be, better, and all of this stuff. You're not going to the WWE, but that was the one thing I always thought was, hey, the accessibility,
Mm-hmm.
the thought that a guy, because we can control it, we can make sure this doesn't happen. But you're sitting in the first 2-3 rows, and the thought that a guy could just fly out of the ring into your lap at any time,
Which does happen.
kind of creates a little bit of adrenaline. which can happen.
Yeah.
But I've always been a pretty big opponent of the guardrails, just like you said, because they're not really utilized. I mean, if you're using them as a prop, great, but then you have to get pretty dang good. You have to have a pretty good setup there. I mean, if you're just using them as a barrier to keep the crowd away, I'm like, man, why are you taking that one thing away from the crowd that
Yeah.
you don't need to take away? You can have them right there.
All I can think of is like I'm just imagining playing a punk rock show at a venue and putting barricades between me and the crowd. Like it doesn't make sense.
Right?
You're removing all the intimacy.
Doesn't make sense.
You're removing a lot of it. I mean, like I said though, it does look really professional. It really does.
It does.
But
I'm a big part of that. I mean, I do believe in that. I want to look professional. I want that production level. But boy, to me, it's at that cost of, like you said, it would look professional at your punk rock shows too.
Yeah.
Like you're putting guardrails up at Vaudeville Muse. I mean,
yeah.
It's like, it's just I don't get it. But
Yeah.
I think part of that, I went to these old AWA shows. I was just reminded of this because as Eric Bischoff, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but I was listening to his 83 Weeks. He was talking about the first ever show he promoted was an AWA show in Mason City, Iowa.
Nice.
And I was there.
Oh, cool.
And I didn't know that, but he was describing it, and he goes, Wahoo McDaniel and Manny Fernandez had this bloodbath of a match. And I remember because Mike Ingebrigtsen, Wahoo, we were in the front row, and because we would get there, I mean, there's wrestlers and stuff. They're like, look at that guy. He's here 3 hours beforehand. I'm like, yeah, so was I. Every show was a freaking teenager. I mean, show starts at 7. I was there at 4.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've been in that boat
lunatic.
too. I've been in that boat even as a 20-some-year-old. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. And so, but Wahoo rolled into my friend Mike, and he was covered in blood. And he had his program, and it just has blood all over it. And
cool.
His grandfather, so he was so cool. But it was my friend's grandma who took us to the show, and his grandpa was the town doctor. And she's like, "Oh my God, you can't have that blood-soaked, program. Oh God, you gotta get rid of that thing, all born diseases." And he still has the blood-soaked program from the fact. But there's guardrails we would never have. There's guardrails. Wahoo would have hit the guardrail and bounced into our shin, and that would have been it. But instead,
yeah, that's the other
DNA in case.
That's another reason I don't like guardrails. If you paid for front row seats and you have guardrails in front of you, you're probably going to get smacked by the guardrails eventually. Or your soda's going to get tipped over into your merch. It's going to happen. I don't know. Like I said, I've been to shows with and without them, but I prefer no guardrails. Like you said, there's the intimacy. People can walk directly through the crowd and battle at the concession stands or do goofy stuff like that. I've seen people, wrestle outside out a back door and things like that before. And with guardrails, that's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I do. I'd like to get your opinion on that, just because, hey, that's something I've never really. I always say I think of things through a fan's perspective. That's something I was really didn't. I was always kind of like, hey, I don't really like that, and so. But I certainly can be swayed if, like I said, you've been to a lot of shows from a lot of different promotions. So, I'd certainly have been open to it, but I've never, I wanted to get your opinion as somebody who's been to many, many shows with and without guardrails, I'm sure.
Well, as dumb as it sounds, if you really wanted to put as much production value into anything as you could, I'd put it up on the stage somewhere because, the attention that's garnished when they walk up the ramp or back down the ramp, that's usually the biggest portion of it. So I've been to shows that had guardrails down the rampway and nothing around the ringside, just to separate them coming down the ring, and it kind of makes the wrestlers be like, I'm here and you're there, and then I'm going to be up there and you're going to be down here, so it kind of makes this little bit of separation. But
hold a second.
I'm trying to think of a good example. WrestlePalooza was a good one of that, where the stage was set up very well and high produced, but then when you get down to ringside level, there was at the first handful of them at least, there was no guardrails down at ringside. So you still maintained intimacy, but up at the top end of the stage, it looked high production value type thing or whatever.
Yeah, and I've always think having a. I don't know how long. I mean, there's nobody ever is going to listen to this part of the podcast. They've tuned me out, Peter, an hour ago.
Oh, I doubt it.
And we can say now is secret time. You can tell me anything. Nobody's made it this far in. They're all like, I don't like to hear Troy talk that much. I'm out.
Well, yeah, grill me with another question if you got another one. Heck, I mean, I'm all about it. I've been to a lot of shows. And I've tried my best to keep my opinion close to my chest because I just really, when I went to pro wrestling shows, I liked them. And the worst part, and is also the best part about most pro wrestling fans, is that they're very opinionated. And sometimes it's hard to argue with the opinions. So I just usually kept a lot of my opinions close to my chest for the most part. But yeah, I mean, now that I'm not in the scene as much as possible, as much as I used to be, I'd be more than happy to let a couple of opinions fly.
Yeah. So who were guys, not because they were bad wrestlers or anything like that, not to speak negatively of it, who are the guys that you just didn't enjoy for whatever reason, that's probably an unfair question because I wouldn't want to answer that. But how about guys you really do want to see lose? Like, you wanted to, you talked like big picture a little bit, but I mean, guys were even in your 20s and 30s, you on the indie level, you did want to see get beat. I mean, for me, that's been like Midnight Guthrie as a kind of a fan. I kind of want to see that guy get his ass kicked.
As of recently, yeah, Captain Midnight has been like. Yeah. I've spent time around him in person. I enjoy him as a person, but like as a wrestling persona, I want to see him get the crap stomped out of him. Like,
right.
He just bothers me.
Yeah, right. I mean, are there other notable people like that? Like maybe not IPW people, but just
I will have to say
Midwest.
When you first said that, like the first person that came to mind that like was one of the first wrestlers, I was like, oh my God, I hate this guy. And it was all based on like just his persona in the ring and how he carried himself. And it was Mark Sterling for some reason. He was he was wrestling as a heel, as a bad guy for a while, and it was just like, I mean, you just mean mug him and shake your fists at him like, God dang, I just want this guy to lose all the time, and I mean, that was one that he was really good at that, at doing that kind of stuff. I mean, he was a Kansas City area wrestler for the most part. He was easily one of the best heels that I saw. The first person obviously that came to mind after this is going to have to be AJ Smooth when he came to Humboldt. That was one where it was just like, dude, get this guy out of here. Get him out of my town. I don't want him in my town anymore. But it's crazy because some of those guys, like I said, you could see from week to week. I've seen Adam Pearce wrestle a few times, and he got a little bit, he wrestled around the world eventually. But I saw him, and it was, he was one of those guys where it's like, dude, this guy is an absolute, like, just the meanest mean guy you've ever seen in your life, and you don't want him to win. Granted, he's like very respectable and nice in real life, but at the same rate, like, his wrestling persona was just like, God, I hate this guy.
I know. He took us. He gave me a tour of the Performance Center, the WWE Performance Center, last August, and I was like,
cool.
Yeah, it was. It was freaking super awesome, and he was just like the most well-spoken. He's just a humble. He's very intelligent. He's just very polite and appreciative of everything he's got.
Yes.
And I'm like, God, you are such a dickhead when you're out there wrestling.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like, I get it more than, I get it as much as anybody on the world should get it. But still, I kind of thought like, that guy's probably a dick in real life too.
I initially thought the same thing, but once you meet him, he looks you in the eye while he shakes your hand and listens to what you said to him and replies to it. He's not just one of those guys that's like, here's your autograph, kid, get the hell out of here,
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that appreciates it, gets it, and knows why he's being paid to be on a show. I mean, that's something for me. Some promoters, and it's not wrong at all. I'm not making anybody, feel bad about the way they're doing things or good about the way they're doing things. But some promoters are like, when they book name talent or a guy like Colt Cabana or Adam Pearce, it's like, they're kind of, they think they're going to become best friends.
Yeah.
There's kind of this, hey, come in early, we'll go out to eat and all that. I just despise. I get super uncomfortable doing that. It's not because I don't want to do it. It's just because, hey, I don't want to I don't know. I just don't want things to get weird. I just want to be professional. I just want, Bob Holly is a guy that is just great. He comes in. He wants the match to be great. He cares about the match. He's not out there just hawking merch up until the time he wrestles.
Mm-hmm.
We are not going to be best friends. He's not sending me birthday wishes on Facebook. I'm going to call him up. I'm going to give him a date. He's going to say he can do it. I'm going to say, can you do it for this much? And he is going to say yes or no. He's going to come in whenever the time we tell him to come in. He's going to do his job. He's going to do it as well and put as much effort in as possible. He's going to get his pay. He's going to leave. And that's great. And that's those are the guys. That's kind of what I want. And that's kind of Adam Peterson. He was kind of, I think he made a living on being that guy. Being hey, I'm just a real person. I'm just coming in. I'm going to do a job. I'm going to be professional. I care about this. I understand where my bread's buttered. I'm going to appreciate every fan that comes to support this, and hopefully, they bring me back. Being a career pro wrestler, I mean, that's a
oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine. That'd be a tough road to hoe, man. I mean,
it is
to go to every single town and just keep winning people over. Like, there's nothing easy about any of that.
Yeah, just to get, to get paid, just have 25, 30 different people you have to work for to make your living.
Oh my God.
It's like, I mean, that's Colt Cabana. Like, we just had him in Des Moines, a few months ago. And, now he's with AEW, and he had signed that deal then. And, you could tell he's freaking excited to he likes doing these indie wrestling shows, but man, to have some stability at his age, I mean, that's what he wants. I mean, he deserves it. That's great. But he's done very well in the indie wrestling circuit, and I mean, very well. But to know every week he's got a paycheck coming in and he doesn't have to frickin', travel and worry about all his own stuff, that's probably got to be a relief. But
yeah, well, let me ask you a question here. Who is the person that you booked for a show that you were just like, holy crap, I can't believe I booked this guy? And then he shows up to the show and he does all the stuff he's supposed to do, obviously. But who was the guy that you were like, I can't believe this guy booked for this show?
Gosh. I almost need to eliminate the Hall of Fame show because it's like a 50-way tie then. And then I still got to think about it. Probably the most memorable, just the guy, it kind of goes back to Duggan in 2012, where it's just like, hey, that guy had been on WrestleManias and been still showing up on Raw. He's at this freaking fairground in West Union, Iowa, and he's getting dressed underneath the grandstand, and a kid falls through the grandstand. Not like falls through a crack in the grandstand. The boards gave way. They broke. Kid just lands right next to Duggan, just underneath these grandstands where our dressing room was.
Oh my God.
And Duggan just says, hey, brother, can I change in your car? I said, sure. And I'm like, here's this freaking WWE guy, like this bigger than life. A guy I watched at WrestleMania 3, the guy who won the first Royal Rumble. He's just here in the flesh, just hanging out. It just blew my mind. It still blows my mind to think about it. And so that's probably one that I was like, wow. And then for the Hall of Fame, these guys I was not that excited about. Ricochet and Sami Callihan. Mm-hmm. I knew they could do crazy stuff. I knew Ricochet could do crazy stuff. I'd never seen either of them live. And I don't know if you saw that match or not.
Yep.
But, it was, I know the finish, and I'm like, please don't tap. Please don't tap.
Yeah.
That match was, it's just, it was great. It's kind of changed. It kind of has made me, you talk about moments that have, hey, you book these guys or these guys. Once we had that match, I'm like, man, that's for guys like Clay Cooper and Nathan Edwards and Regal Twins and the crazy, the hooligans.
Yeah.
You know, that can do these ridiculously athletic things. They're just not even athletic all the time, but just put together this match where it's like people were marking out guys I knew. I was looking around the crowd and I'm like seeing people that I've been to shows with for 35 years from when we were kids, and they're screaming at the top of their lungs for Ricochet not to tap, or, you know, just, it was like, man, I mean, that was, that was pretty damn great. And then really probably my favorite, you know, and this is off that question, but then, you know, hey, we ended up having James Jeffries winning the belt managed by J.J. Dillon inside a steel cage against Justin Decent, you know, maybe one of my all-time favorite moments. And so, but yeah, Ricochet, Sami Callihan were two guys that were just like above and beyond what I thought. But as far as guys that I didn't think, you know, I would ever have on, you know, a show or book, like, you know, Jim Ross is another guy though. Jim Ross and Jerry Briscoe, just being in conversations as part of the, you know, the Hall of Fame selection committee, and being able to, you know, pick their brain. And that's just, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so, you know, those moments are ones that are like, hey, these guys are real human beings, and they are, you know, asking, you know, and we're going back and forth discussing something, and in those moments again are never lost on me. But yeah. I wish I could answer a question in less than 20 minutes, but I can't. I apologize.
No, it's great. It makes my job easy. No, no, this is like one of the coolest things is realizing that like even the people that are showing up to these Hall of Fame shows to perform or do some sort of a job for you, they all love wrestling just as much as you love wrestling, just as much as the people showing up to wrestle, just as much as the people that are there to watch the wrestling. I mean, everybody's there because they love wrestling, and I didn't realize when I got into wrestling that there was such a community involved. Like all you people really enjoy, you know, not just the thing of wrestling, but enjoy. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've sat outside of shows like after the show ended and talked to, you know, fans that I'd seen at other shows before, where it's just like, hey, you know, what'd you think of this? And I can't believe this guy won. It's like, yeah, you know, next month, you know, he'll lose next month to this guy. You know he will, you know, and like you kind of get these little storylines that you kind of just hem-haw a little bit before and after the shows about, and it's pretty fun, you know. I never really imagined there would be that big of a community. I never realized that everybody would care that much, not just about the show that's going on, but even just everyone's well-being around and outside the show. You start to realize everybody follows each other on Twitter and Facebook, and we're all friends kind of in this community. And I'm sure there's people that you've met over the years that you become Facebook friends with where you're like, oh, I haven't seen this guy in forever, and look at this post he made, you know. And it's kind of cool to be able to just always be, you know, in contact with them somehow, and you have wrestling to thank for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I was talking to Austin Bayless today. I was talking to him, and we're going back, and we're talking. He goes, hey, there's this lady. He was talking about these people that help him out at the show, and they do all this stuff, and they're just great fans, and they're kind of beyond that. I mean, they help Austin do a lot of the stuff that other people don't want to do, and just help with a lot of the day of stuff. And he's telling me about the one. He goes, yeah, I think you were in her wedding. And I'm like, what? And then I'm like, oh yeah. So it's like, goes back. There's this guy that used to work for me, and he was dating this girl, and now she's married this guy who's a wrestling fan. It's just this super complicated small world that kind of all, you know, kind of comes back to pro wrestling, and you have all these relationships, and like you said, this big community and big family. That's kind of, you know, that's something I get defensive of to my own detriment sometimes. But I'm like, hey, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to talk. Like wrestling, we're so desperate sometimes to be seen because we're so used to kind of being, you know, kind of in the corner of the mainstream that even if the attention is negative, we jump on it, like the Chris Benoit. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
Every wrestler on the planet's doing Larry King and doing, you know, all these interviews, and it made me sick. You know, it's like, hey, we don't need to hide anything. I'm not saying that, but hey, we're wrestling fans. We're not talking about a rodeo guy that killed his family.
Yeah.
We don't give a shit about that.
Yeah.
So why are we picking on the only thing we all love and pointing out the very worst people to do that? Let's find another sport, another activity, another, form of entertainment to pick on. We're not cleaning it up. That's not what we're doing. We're just trying to become a part of something bigger because we're kind of used to, as wrestling world, not being super important. So sometimes the only time wrestling gets into press is negatively, and that kind of bothers me because there is some great things. There's so many great people in it and great things about it. I wish we would all at least focus on that, not ignore the negative, but clean that up. But let's celebrate the positives.
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you're saying. It's there was some old adage where like you could do 100 things and you do one of them wrong, and then somebody's going to point out the one wrong thing that happened and say, "Look, you screwed that up." It's not anybody's fault that like some bad things happen to some bad people, and it seems like you said that gets keyed in on a lot in like pro wrestling where it's like, oh, so and so, this guy died and he was a wrestler and he died young, and is it from CTE? Is it from partying too hard? Or is all wrestlers are on steroids? That was the 1990s. Everyone was yelling about that. And it's like, dude, like why are you focusing on this? Like, it seemed like everybody focuses on the wrong thing at the wrong times, and like that honestly, like that whole wrestling steroid thing almost killed wrestling. For a period in the 90s, there was nobody liked it, nobody cared about it. And I mean Raw wasn't very good, and Nitro was non-existent, and it's just there was for a while there in the 90s, like I said, that stuff almost killed it. The Benoit thing almost killed wrestling for a while. It's
and part of that was because the ability of the kind of the wrestlers just jumping on the bandwagon. Hey, I can be on national TV now talking about something, And,
yeah.
I mean, I had with Brian Christopher. We did a show. It was with Rikishi, and it was this territory league wrestling.
Oh yeah,
by Reno, Illinois.
That was in Iowa City, maybe.
Yeah, Iowa City, and we worked. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, Peter. We'll just do
all right.
We'll do a 2-hour podcast on the weekend or the week and the months and months leading up to it. It was a lot went into it, but anyway, Brian Christopher came in and he stayed at my house on like the Wednesday beforehand, and that was the Wednesday after Jerry Lawler had a heart attack.
Oh wow!
And
for people that don't know, that's his son.
Yes. And so
Jerry the King Lawler's son. But yeah,
I've been trying to get some radio interviews going on with different local radio people, and they're kind of like, trying to help get to this event some press. And then I get like 3 calls that all want to talk to Brian now about his dad having a heart attack.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He doesn't want to talk about that. I go, well, he doesn't want to talk about his dad having a heart attack. So he'd love to be on your show, though. No, and so we didn't do the interviews, I mean, like it was kind of and that's where just like, I don't want to be a part of, I get it. If it's not a big enough deal for you just to talk about him being in town wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not.
You guys want to breed some negativity and spread it around, and that's so unfortunate.
Yeah, that's not what we want to be a part of. That's not what Brian wanted to be a part of. Brian's like, hey, I'm wrestling in Iowa City. It's going to be fun. Come out and check it out. Mm-hmm. He's not there to want to talk about the circumstances surrounding his dad's heart attack 2 days previous. It's just not. I mean, that's just, and that's kind of where I guess my point is like, hey, just, we really we are a wrestling community. It's a family. It's something I'm proud to be a part of, and hopefully I've shaped part of it in our area. And there's a lot of great wrestling. I mean, we're talking 20 years ago, there was 4 or 5 wrestlers in the state of Iowa.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. Wrestlers at all.
Wrestlers at all, you know, really. I mean, like, you had T.S. Gressler, Mr. Destiny, Gage Octane, Brian Ash, Brent Fillmore, and, you know, yeah, that's about it. You know, and then, I mean, that was like, yeah, because we did our first show, we had to bring guys in from all over the place, you know.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, now there's, heck, I don't even know, just either on the border or in Iowa, you have, you know, 3XW, you have CW and Rugged Pro and PWP and Scott County and Magnum Pro and
oh yeah,
LWE and, you know, the No Limits Wrestling over in Sioux City. And, you know, I mean, like, you have 10 promotions.
You have more.
Wrestlers.
Yeah, I was going to say you got more promotions than you used to have wrestlers.
Yeah. So it is great that this community, it is a community. And yeah, hey, we don't all like each other. And, you know, but, you know, it's every family's like that. We don't have to like each other, but hopefully, I think we're going to start, at least in Iowa, and that's all I can really speak to. I feel like it's as healthy as it's ever been as far as everybody. I don't feel like anybody's trying to, you know, like root against somebody else, or at least I'm not. You know, everybody I talk to, which I talk to more promoters now than I've ever talked to, you know, I mean, partly because there's more of them, but I mean, I talk to most of them relatively regularly, and there's, you know, it's a, nobody's, hey, I hope you fail next Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Know? Yeah.
It's just so positive. I mean, I remember, you know, years ago, like, hey, 3XW and us, we hated each other. We didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
We both say that now, you know, I mean, I talked to Corey McDowell the other day. I mean, she wasn't really involved when we were hating each other, but certainly, you know, I mean, it was just silly, you know, it was just, but it wasn't silly at the time. And I was very much a part of it. I was mad and it just meant everything. And it shouldn't, you know, now I just like, God, it's so dumb.
Well, yeah, you know what, actually, like, that was, like, while I was going to shows, I mean, we can touch on that just a tiny bit, but there was a short period of time where I'd go to shows in Algona for IPW, and then down in Des Moines, IPW was starting to run shows down there, as well as, like, county fairs and things like that. But 3X also ran down in Des Moines, and it was kind of crazy because you'd see people wrestle for both promotions, and then for a while they would only wrestle for one or the other. And it was like, why is this happening? And you'd kind of hear, you put your ear to the ground and figure out, like, oh, these guys they're not getting along right now for some reason, you know. And it was bad, and it was bad and good. Like, the good part about it was, like, I had to go to both promotions to see the wrestlers that I wanted to see, but, like, you know. No, that was like the good, but the bad part was that it created like a little bit of turmoil on the inside that obviously kind of shone through a little bit in the product if you went to both products.
Sure, absolutely, and you know, and I think even now, like with 3X Wrestling in Des Moines, I mean, the only thing, and we could communicate better, you know, but I mean, the only thing I don't care if every one of our wrestlers wrestles for 3XW. I mean, I use 3XW as an example because they ran, you know, 8 blocks away, you know, so I mean, it's going to be an overlap. You know, Rugged Pro's 40 miles away, and, you know, CDW's 60 miles away. We don't have a big overlap in our fan base. I mean, there's 10, 20 people that are going to make the trip, but that's not what's going to make a difference, you know? Yeah. And so, like with 3XW specifically, though, I guess my only thing is, hey, if we owe it to the fans that if we're using the same talent to try to be consistent in whether or not they're heels or baby faces. You know, that's not the only thing I care about. If our guys go over there and they lose or, you know, whatever, that's fine. But if they're pushing somebody as a face and doing a big baby face run, and I book that person in a one-off and have them be the worst heel in the world, that's kind of screwing those guys over.
Yeah, I totally follow, because that harkens back to like the territory days, back when people would actually travel a whole territory, and it's like, Dude, I'm a bad guy. You know why? Because I work out of this one town and I'm on TV in this one town and they know me as a bad guy. So I got to be a bad guy when I show up here because on the off chance anyone's ever seen any of my work, they know I'm a bad guy, you know? And
right. And you know, and yeah, so that's about the only thing I, you know, at this point. But I mean, there's certainly a time. I mean, I remember this was kind of a turning point. Gosh, now nobody's listening. I could say anything. I could say now everybody's long gone. But yeah, I remember, I don't know, maybe it was 2000, let's say 9, and Steve Bealey, who was one of the owners of 3X70 at the time, were yelling at each other, and I don't want to know what I was saying. I'm sure he doesn't want to know what he was saying, but I mean, it was whatever vile thing came to my mind. And, you know, I hung up and I was so mad. And my wife just said, Caroline's like, hey, if you want to do this pro wrestling thing and you want to devote all of our weekends to it, that's fine. You know, if you want to spend every night talking pro wrestling and doing that and putting this together because you love it, that's fine. You know, if you want to use our money and this, you know, if we lose money on the shows and, you know, that's fine. But if you're going to do all that and you're not going to have fun, you have to quit right now.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, and that changed my life. I mean, it was like I called back Steve Bealey, and he was still mad, and I understood why he was mad. I mean, I don't now, but I'm sure I did then. And I said, hey, I'm not fighting with you. I'm just not. You're fighting with yourself. I can't do it. You know, I mean, we don't have to like each other. We don't have to, you know, go to each other's birthday parties. I mean, I've talked to Steve, you know, not many times, but a couple of times. He's out of wrestling now, but I mean, we're fine and, you know, whatever. But just at that point, all of it kind of changed for me then. You know, a little like that was all like, hey, I just have to focus on the positive. And,
yeah.
You know, and then that's kind of right around the time we got involved with the Hall of Fame and really things started clicking. And I kind of credit all that to not focusing on the negative, which I think is so easy to do in anything. Wrestling's not special, you know.
Yeah.
There's, you know, bad people in everything. There's bad people and, you know, we're not, but I think we have way more good people than bad. So
yeah, I mean, me too with the wrestling world. I was talking about that when I talked to Todd a handful of episodes back, the promoter for 3X. Is the amount of good people I've met outweigh the bad, you know, 20, 40, 50 to 1 easily in the pro wrestling community. I never met too many people that were really, you know, so in it for themselves that they were, you know, a hindrance to people around them. You know, everyone is, for the most part, it comes back to that being a good community full of people that all generally really care about each other, you know, from a fan standpoint, at least. That's the way I took it. Because I don't know, I went to so many shows, I hung out with a lot of you guys, and I enjoyed spending time with each and every one of you. I just couldn't believe that somebody had the dedication to wrestle in shows around Iowa, and not only that, but to promote the shows, and then to have all the people show up to the shows. It was just like the whole thing was just kind of like it was crazy to me, and like the only way I could give back at the time was like my Twitter account, which was kind of a fun little account that, you know, I'd tweet the matches out and who won and maybe a little bit about what happened or something, and people from all around the state that couldn't make it to other shows, like, oh, I wanted to go to this show tonight and I couldn't make it, you know, and all I was trying to do is just be as positive as I could, because like you said, it's weird, but like when something negative happens or somebody negative is around, it tends to bleed, especially me, it bleeds into my life, and I kind of get negative with them, you know, and so I try my best to,
sure,
you know, keep it out of my life in my adult life. I mean, kudos to your wife though, also for realizing that, like, you know, you gotta have fun doing what you're doing. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Right. I mean, I never even thought about it. It just made so much sense. Yeah. I know it sounds like a story that's anecdotal, but when she said that, you know, she's like, hey, you gotta have fun, or, you know.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're running a promotion out of spite, and that doesn't make any sense. You know?
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
Oh man.
You know, but yeah, I mean, that's what it felt like sometimes. I mean, it felt like, hey, I'm just running this show to stick it at Austin Bayless or Todd Countryman, and it's like, they don't give a shit. You know, like
yeah, exactly. They don't care.
you know,
Yeah.
and then I'm sure they were doing the same thing. You know, I mean, but you know, now it's like, yeah, what do I care if they're running and I'm running? I mean, who cares? It's just all. There's no brand recognition in this. I mean, I wish there was more, but there isn't much brand recognition. People just are coming to a wrestling show. So,
Yeah.
you know, to really get bent out of shape over, you know, this person running the show or whatever, it just doesn't matter. You know, there's plenty of people. There's 500,000 people in Des Moines. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
trying to get 250 of them. You know, that's kind of, I'm long gone. Longer the past are the days where I'm like, oh, Iowa State had a home game. That's why we didn't draw. Because there's 50,000 people there. There's still 450,000 people in Des Moines, more than enough to fill a wrestling show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
so, and it's not some of the wrestling promotion's fault. And really, as a wrestling fan, hey, if you're going to spend next Saturday, I mean, obviously now nobody's doing anything, but
Yeah.
if you're going to spend a Saturday going to the monster trucks or Rugged Pro Wrestling, well, I'd rather you go see Rugged Pro Wrestling. You know,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, why am I rooting against somebody that does something I love? Like, I'm rooting, you know, and it's like, hey, we can be rivals within this, but if any other, you know, form of entertainment, I mean, that's when we go to trade shows and we're pitching wrestling shows. We're against country music acts and motocross events and bull riding and truck wagon racing, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, hey, I'd rather have them pick a rival wrestling promotion than a truck wagon racing. But sometimes we don't think that way. Sometimes it's like, hey, you'd rather have them pick truck wagon racing than a rival wrestling promotion, where if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. You know, it's and I've certainly been on that side of it too. I'm not saying, you know, I wasn't, but certainly now I've come to realize that, hey, wrestling, like Pro Wrestling Revolver, them coming to Des Moines, and people were like, oh, God, is that bad? I'm like, it's great. They're drawing 500 people. So that means, you know, we're lucky if we get to 300, we're tickled pink in Des Moines. And so if that's 200 people that don't know about us or that don't come to our shows. That's an opportunity. You know, we know there's 500 wrestling fans in Des Moines. You know,
Exactly.
It's not, they're creating a fan base because they're only there 3-4 times a year. So hopefully they're creating a need in people to want to go see wrestling. And so we can only benefit from that, you know, and and that's, I mean, you know, I get it. If you're doing bad wrestling and you're presenting it poorly and you're, you know, then don't, you know, it probably does hurt us more than help us. Although maybe I should probably get rolling, but I want to, my guilty pleasure, my skeleton in the closet is I love watching unintentionally bad wrestling.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I love it, and I know I shouldn't, and it goes against, it hurts wrestling, and I get it, but live, I mean, I watched a couple shows with Mantar a few years back.
Yep.
I mean, they were some of the greatest moments of my life. And it wasn't even Mantar. It was just like kind of, I mean, there's just like, you know, some things were, I mean, I love it. You know, and even like Buck Zumoff used to run these shows. Did you ever get to see a Buck Zumoff show?
Not that I know of.
Buck Rock and Roll Zumoff?
Nope.
God. He'd run bars, and he was an old AWA. He was a junior heavyweight champion, and he's just a carny, terrible human being, as it turns out. But he would run these shows, and they were just bad. It was rock and wrestling. It was midgets, women, and giants. So that's what he would. Okay. That's what he would have. You know, it'd be like 5 people on the show. So like he would ref the first match, ring announce the second match, wrestle in the third match. Everybody would rotate in, you know. So it was just they were crazy, terrible. But like the crowd would like them. And so it's like, who am I to judge?
Yeah.
I mean, people would laugh and, maybe they're not liking it in the way it's intended to be liked, but people were leaving happy, and I didn't, and I certainly didn't want it to represent us, and I'm sure it did on some level. So yeah, I wasn't going out promoting it and saying, hey, make sure you go check this out, because it probably wasn't good for wrestling in Iowa, because that's the perception people would get that everything is. But
yes.
To watch it as a fan, my guilty pleasure. Some of my greatest moments of all time. It was bad.
I had an idea when I was watching wrestling that, like, if I ever started a wrestling promotion, I would call it UPW, and it would stand for unprofessional wrestling, because, like I said, I've been to a lot of shows where it's just like, dude, we got popcorn and we got soda, but it's not in a fridge. It's, and like, when's the start time? And the start time is never when it actually is. And, I just thought about, like, what are all the hokey things I've seen at a wrestling show that I could combine all into one show and just call it unprofessional wrestling? And, like, I don't know. I always thought that would be a fun, like, you could turn that into a gimmick all on its own, and actually probably pull it off somehow,
Yeah, I mean, let's talk off air. I think, we'll have to put something together.
Dude, it would be so fun. And that's an idea. I mean, I've had that idea for a long time, and I've kept it under my belt. And this is actually the first time I've ever like said it to anyone. So, but yeah, I just thought.
Oh man, that's great.
I always thought that'd be a good one. But and that's the other thing. Like in the wrestling community, it's just like, who's gonna take this the wrong way if I say it? When I'm going to shows all the time, because I was that guy on Twitter that was trying to be positive all the time and say things like that. And I didn't want anyone to take it the wrong way, so I never said it. But now that I know that everyone's, now that I know that you're all humans, and I've known you long enough, and, I've known, heck, you and I have known each other almost 10 years now. It's,
I know, it's crazy.
That's wild. It's wild to think that too, that like wrestling is, for 10 years we've known each other just because of pro wrestling, and I off chance met you at a show and realized that you're a nice guy. Like I said, you're not friggin' Daddy Warbucks with a suit and a fistful of cash and smoking a cigar, like, everybody come get your envelopes, you see, like.
That's my new goal. I've always said, I was like, I jokingly say, I've had 75 people tell me that was the greatest night they've ever had in their lives. I said, I've had that experience a lot. I'd love to have 5,000 paying fans tell me that was the worst wrestling show they've ever seen. I just want that experience one time. I've had 50 people tell me it was great a lot. I'd like to have 5,000 tell me it was bad, because I bet you that's not that bad of an experience either. I'd like to experience both ends of that.
Yeah, man.
So...
Well, all right.
Oh, shoot.
Heck, I'll tell you what, this sounds like a great spot to end it, because like we got that positive spot where if you're not having fun with what you're doing, then why are you doing it? And that's going to be every podcast I do. I feel like there's something I can take away from every one of them, and that's the one I'm going to take away from this. That's a good one.
I've always said a moron hates their job for more than 6 months.
Oh, that's another good one.
That's my axiom in life. It's like, hey, I've hated jobs, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Just quit. I can't figure it out. It's not where, it's just like,
yeah,
you're not going to die in the street. Just if you're miserable, just quit. And that's kind of how wrestling, it's like, hey, nobody gets into this by accident. Like you said, I mean, it's a very purposeful endeavor. It's a lot of work, and people, like with the training, it's always like the money kind of is that big hurdle. And we kind of tell people, well, hey, that's the least of your hurdles, because you're going to be dedicating 2-3 days a week for the next 16, 20 weeks in training. And then you're going to have to drive all over the freaking Midwest and hopefully the country if you're lucky. If you're lucky, you get to do that.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you get to leave the state.
Yeah. And go on these road trips and for sometimes nothing and come out, there's so many more sacrifices beyond that first, $2,000 to train.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
If you don't think you're going to love doing it, then don't do it. But I think that's what that process does weed people out to where.
Yeah. How bad do you actually want to do it?
Yeah. You're dealing with everybody in that locker room is as a fan. You know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's great. So I appreciate you doing what you do. This is awesome. I can't imagine. I hope you don't edit this down because it'll be 6 minutes long. Of the 6 minutes I made sense, but
No.
Normally I'd be carnying a few shows, but obviously in our current state, there's not much to promote. But
well, here's the easiest way to do it. If you want to check it out, go to facebook.com and check out Impact Pro Wrestling. You can type in Impact Pro Wrestling and you'll check it out right there. Otherwise, go facebook.com/Impact Pro Wrestling. It'll take you right to the page. You guys also have Twitter. Twitter is at IPW Pro. And you even have a website, which the website is, I don't know how up to date it is.
Don't give it out. Don't give it out. Don't give it out.
All right.
No.
Do you guys have an Instagram account?
We do.
I did.
You're making me look old.
No, it's cool.
I think it's IPW Pro.
Yes, I did find that one. It's IPW Pro, and if you find the name and it says Troy Peterson, that's the promotion there. Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you ever want, I would be more than happy to help show you how to tie all that stuff together and make it super easy to run.
Man. Let's do that tomorrow.
Dude, anytime that, like, I'll tell you what, anytime you're in Algona next time, I will be more than happy to swing up there. All you have to do is have a phone, and I can show you how to do it all on your phone. And I mean,
that's good.
Yeah, man. I mean, you guys have always been one of the best as far as like making flyers that draw attention. I'm looking at a couple of them right now for some of your past shows. They're amazingly professional looking flyers. You guys run a great tight ship there at IPW. Whether or not you're doing it in Algona or in Des Moines or across the state or at the fair shows in the summer on your little mini tours that you take to other towns. Dude, I appreciate everything you do. You've entertained the masses for almost 20 years now.
Well, thank you. I want to give a quick shout out to Spot Monkey Media and Christopher Huffman for making those posters because, paying, this is something I never gave credit to, like a graphic designer. So I'm not going to pay somebody just to design a poster.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the best money we've ever spent. It's just,
absolutely.
Hey, he is a pro and he does great stuff. So,
yeah.
Thank you for having me on. I hope this has been, we didn't have a game plan and I tend to ramble, but
dude, I think it worked out great.
I had a lot of fun.
All right, appreciate it, Troy. Keep in touch, man. I'll look forward to seeing one of your shows when the whole coronavirus scare is over.
Absolutely. May 23rd is kind of what we're hoping for our kickback, but who knows with that. So.
All righty. Keep us all posted on the social media sites. Really appreciate everything you do, Troy. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Boom. That's 2 hours, man. That's and not, you know what, not to toot my own horn and Troy's horn, but that was a good 2 hours. I sit down and I talk to Troy at shows. I've talked with him before, during, and after shows. I've met up with him at not even at shows. He's a good guy. I really liked hanging out with him. Even though it was via Skype, it was still very, very nice to sit down and get the opportunity to pick Troy's brain about wrestling in general. It's always like I said in the intro, wrestling's a little bit opinionated. Everyone kind of likes the genre that they grew up with more than anything, and I get that. I totally get that to an extent. I grew up in the Attitude Era, so I like a little bit of the chaos, but as you grow up and you watch all these different wrestling, some people like the Hulk Hogan era, and some people, like the modern era, because that's what's popular on TV now. And we kind of just talk about what we prefer and all sorts of good stuff in here. It's a really fun episode. We kind of went all up and down the gauntlet of talking about things from what we like about wrestling and named a whole bunch of people that we've seen wrestle. And speaking of which, I don't think we ever mentioned Tony Sly in this episode once. We might have. When we were done recording, I was thinking to myself, I don't know if we mentioned Tony Sly, but yeah, Tony Sly is another one of those guys that you go watch live, and he was always there, either at 3X or IPW or both. He spent so much time wrestling at both of those. Tremendous wrestler. Another one would be like a Ricky Love. I saw Ricky Love wrestle a lot for IPW and 3X a handful of times. And I mean, there's so many wrestlers out there that even though I've came back and re-mentioned those two. I mentioned them for the first time in this episode. There's still tons we forgot to mention. So if I forgot to mention you and you're one of the pro wrestlers and you're listening to this, hey, I'm sorry, I forgot. There's so many people out there that are working for so many companies, and it's crazy. I didn't realize there was that many people wrestling and that many promotions when I first got into wrestling. Between 5 and 10 years ago, I first started watching shows, and it's wild, man. It's wild. There's tons of pro wrestling out there, and those live shows, those indie shows, are tons of fun. They're intimate. It's great to be able to sit down and be able to talk to the wrestlers at intermission, and maybe buy a shirt from a local guy. And, I have so many pro wrestling shirts from indie wrestlers. It's insanity. You thought I had a lot of concert shirts. That's another one I've got a lot of, is pro wrestling shirts of all sorts. So, hey, if you like pro wrestling, I hope you guys like this episode. If you don't like pro wrestling and you sat and listened to this whole episode, hey, thank you so much. Check out a live show sometime. I bet you will like it more than you think you will. If you like wrestling in any capacity, and even if you don't, I've taken people to wrestling shows that have zero interest in wrestling, even at all, and they still liked it. So go figure. It's a live performance. It's very entertaining, and like I said, you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy it. Just want to give a huge shout out to Troy for taking 2 hours out of his day to sit down and talk with me. Dude, Troy, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I also want to tell everyone, hey, check out IPW Pro on all the Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all the good stuff. On Facebook, it is at Impact Pro Wrestling. On Twitter, it is IPW Pro. And then same thing on Instagram as well. So check those out. Hopefully Troy and I can get together and we can maybe streamline some of this stuff. But I got to be honest, Troy does a pretty darn good job of keeping his social media up to date and everything. So hats off. It's a daunting task. I know that I slack a decent amount on my social media here at Audible Farm, but at the same rate, life gets in the way sometimes. You get kind of busy, but I'm still doing my best to put out an episode a week, and I just want to say thanks to all my guests for continually meeting with my weird schedules, and I have just these odd windows of time that are available to me to be able to do the podcast. So I just want to say thanks to all my guests. Thanks this week to Troy, and thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. And huge shout out to Couchtown Coffee. Good. That's amazing stuff. Like I said, I took a little break from Couchtown, and I don't know what I was thinking. It's easily the best coffee. Hands down. Give it a shot. Local musician makes Couchtown Coffee. Roasts it right here in Iowa. It's amazing stuff. Check it out. Go to couchtowncoffee.com or Facebook. They've got a page there on Facebook too. It's Couchtown Coffee. So check it out. Enjoy it. Use the code word INDIE. Save yourself 20% this week. I am out of here. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll check you next week. Peace.